So there's been some requests to update a tutorial on processing solar images to make animations. So I'll attempt to discuss the steps that I take to get to this point of taking a series of different AVIs and then putting them together to make an animation such as this, as you see here. So I'll start out with this reprise of capturing the sun for animations. I'm in Firecapture at the moment using an ASI 174 camera. It's at the full resolution of 1936 1216 pixels. See, I've got the sun centered. Also bring up, I have my Hinode guider going on at the moment. This is the screen for the Hinode guider, solar guider. Since I've got the sun centered, I'll hit set so it knows it's in the middle. And then you do a quick calibration. It'll go through some movements where it'll take up the declination backlash followed by the RA backlash, and then it will move them in both coordinates to make sure everything is set up correctly. It's moving through the RA backlash at the moment. This doesn't take long, about a minute or so. Now it's moving the RA axis and the declination axis. I'll return them back and it's ready to go. Calibration was successful. So I'll bring this back to center. And it shows in centered. Okay, go back to this. A fairly nice sharp focus with AR 2781 here on this limb. The newest AR coming around, some filaments. There's a small prom there. Right now I have gamma off, exposure at 10 milliseconds. If I turn gamma on, you can see this is a double stack. You can see the ghost image here, just out of the view here. Looks like a decent prom there. If I bring gamma down a bit, some nice proms here, nice proms here, and I'll set up for some shots now. So I'm going to pause at this. So I'm in Firecapture, and you can see the limb of the sun. This would be the northwest limb, and I have gamma on at the moment so I can take a look at some features here. I'm going to crank up the gain a little bit to show some of the proms that are on the edge. Bring it back down. You can actually see, I'll bring this down a little bit, that there is a philoprom. Bring that up just a bit. Turn off gamma. It's hard to see the philoprom. Now there you can see it phasing in and out. But today I'm interested in the proms themselves. So I'm going to change this region of interest by clicking up here and highlighting what I want to get in. That'll increase my frames per second. And gets in the area I want. I have a choice here of trying to get the philoprom itself or blowing things out to just get the proms themselves as much detail as I can, which is what I think I'm going to do. So I can see the movement on the proms, get the focus as best possible. You see the seeing's not perfect today. Got some ripples going on, but it will do for at least showing how to capture. The other thing I have open at the moment is my Hinode solar guider. This is the control panel for it. I've already gone through the calibration. You can see it guides on the entire disk of the sun. It's showing the area that I'm pointing at now on the northwestern limb. And I typically put this reticle up to just so I know where I had set my image at, so I can check this every so often to see how things are going along with the guider, because if you're not perfectly solar or perfectly polar aligned, then you can get some drift. I'll turn on guiding now. If you watch, the guider will go through it's giving commands now to the mount to keep it where I want it. And you'll see the intensity of the sun right now is negative 2.6 electron volts. That can change as the sun rises. I'll leave that in here on the side. Notice my histogram, it's cut off here because I'm going to overexpose, and I'm doing that so I can get as much detail in the proms as possible. So I'm going to choose a file folder that I want, make a new one, call this Northwest Prom, and it's Friday the 13th. So put that in there, get it ready to go. So that's the folder, these AVIs. I capture AVIs. You can capture AVIs, you can capture SERs, whichever you prefer. I've always done AVIs, so I stick with them. I'll do 500 frames, and I've already set up the auto run here to do 45 individual runs every 60 seconds. That works out well. Gives you plenty of frames to work with. You can go as long as you want. I like to go at least 45. Sometimes I'll do 60. It all depends upon what's happening. If it's a quiescent prom, I may just go 30 minutes, sometimes 45. If it's an active one, I'll tend to go longer. But once I've got that set up and I've got the guiding set and I've chosen everything for my auto run, then I will just hit start, and it will start capturing my AVIs. So getting about 58 frames per second, which isn't bad. I like higher, but this is a larger field that I'm looking at. Typically a larger ROI. Sometimes I go down smaller to get up to 90 frames per second, but 58 will work out fine. So we'll watch. I'll be watching this area to see if this isn't a little surge prom about to pop up. You'll oftentimes see those start out as a little brighter button and then go on. So at this point I've got the guiding going on. It's all holding nice and steady. So I'll stop recording. We'll come back after this. Something else I'll point out while this is running. Talk about seeing. You can make a pretty good guess that seeing right now is about a 3. They go on a scale of 1 to 5, 1 being horrible, a 0 being you can't see a thing. It looks like a wave machine basically, but you'll see a little bit of wave going on, just a little bit of shaking. I would say this is around a 3 in seeing. At this point in time, it's holding fairly steady. Some other settings that you may notice in Fire Capture, this is the flat field. that you can set up. I'm not using that right now, mainly because I'm blowing out the disc. I'm not too worried about Newton rings. I don't see any dust particles, anything like that. So I'm not currently using a flat field, but you can set that. It's easy to do. You'll notice over here I do have the histogram open, of course the reticle. This flip X means I flip the X-axis. That's to make sure my orientation is correct as to how it's shown in programs like Gong Solar or any of the other space weather, the other solar viewing sites. They orient the sun so north is up, south is down, west is to the right, east is to the left. So this way, when I'm presenting these, people know where on the disk these particular prominences or sunspots, filaments, etc. are on the disk. So just wanted to point those things out as we continue to capture AVIs for this particular animation. Checking on the, you'll see when we started it was at minus 2.6. It's now gone up to minus 2.5, which means the intensity has increased somewhat. That may be noticeable when you're doing only proms and you're doing a white disk. It's not so noticeable to see an increase in the brightness of everything. You can go and you could change your exposure, decrease the time, but for this particular animation I'm not going to worry about it because I don't think it's going to show up much when you change from minus 2.6 to minus 2.5. Now if it went from minus 3 to minus 2.5, you'd definitely see a flicker in your animation. But you can watch your histogram to see if it's changing too much. But if you do have the Hinode guider, it is a nice little feature that it does show what the intensity is at the particular moment. Okay, at this time I've captured 45 individual AVIs that I'm going to now align and stack in AutoStacker 3. And to do that, I'll do open. I'll go find those files, which this happened to be the Northwest Prom on 11/13. So I'll go to those videos. And I'm going to click on the first one, click on the last, and open. And AutoStacker will bring all of those AVIs in, and you'll see it already has an alignment box. To do this, we're going to do surface. I select cropped. It makes it easier to align the individual images when they're cropped like this rather than doing expand. I'll leave noise at robust, everything else out, local at AP, and you just hit analyze at that point. And it's going to analyze all of the frames in this particular AVI and rank them from best to worst. And you'll see we've got pretty good steady seeing at this point in time. A lot of the pictures are in above the 50% mark. I always go with 30%. You can change these. You can put in a number of frames to stack. If you recall, I captured 500 frames on these AVIs. I'm going to select 30% of those, or 150 of the best frames to stack. You can add additional criteria if you want. Say you want another one to do 50% of the frames or 20, whatever you really want to do. It will make separate files for each of these selections that you decide. I just go with 30%. I always have. And next we're going to place AP grid. We're going to place the alignment points and do this automatically. You can set the minimum brightness that you want to do. For instance, right now it's fairly low. If we go up a little bit and say place alignment points, it selects everything. I don't want that. I want it to select just the areas that I want it to align on. Now, let's say change that up to minimum of 50, and you'll see that it chose these proms and the edge and the disk. Nothing out here. And at this point, I like those alignment points. All I'm going to do is hit stack, and it's going to start, and it will do every AVI. In this case, there's 46 of them. We'll go through. It will do the analyzation. It will then place the alignment points, and it will go ahead and stack an image, and then it will move on to the next one. And I like this, that way you're not trying to do one at a time. You can put in as many of the AVIs or SERs that you wish to do, and it will go through and do each one of them. You'll see it's about to finish the first one, and once that happens, it will finish that, and it will go on to the next. So it's on to number 2. So we'll go through that. We're not going to sit here and watch all of these go through, but you'll see each different AVI comes up. It analyzes it, puts in the alignment points, then goes and stacks the best ones. So we'll stop the recording right now. So once you've gone through AutoStacker and you've done all of your stacking on your AVIs, it will form TIFFs, and we want to first process one to get how we want to. I'm in now IMPPG, which is a great program for doing some initial processing, curves, changes, etc., to get your TIFFs ready to put into an animation. So I'm going to open up one of those TIFFs that we did, and it comes out open with an area of interest. And I'm just going to expand that by clicking here to include the entire frame. Now it's the entire frame. And I'm going to go to the Lucy Richardson deconvolution. I'll reset that as I've been working with it. These are the default settings. And you can see that there is some detail. They're soft. So I'm going to slide the slider over. And you'll see that you'll get a little bit more detail coming through. Go a little bit further. Usually when I know I'm using my 2x Barlow, I go up around 2.3 on the Lucy Richardson deconvolution to get some nice detail. See the spicules coming out. And I may increase the sharpening here a little bit too, and the unsharp mask, just to add a little bit more sharpness to the problems. I don't want to go overboard because then it can introduce artifacts, etc. But we'll bring that up. That looks pretty good. And you have your curves down here. And again, this takes a lot of trial and error. I'm going to bring this down so the background's a little bit blacker. Bring this up a little bit to bring out the proms. You'll notice I start getting a little bit of noise in here. You know, eliminate that. If I bring up the sky level a little bit, because it does bring out fainter areas. Let's reset that. Let's just bring this up this way. Keeps the sky a little bit cleaner. You can always bring this down just a little bit to dark, but you'll see that noise comes in. I take it up a little bit, gets rid of the noise, but you still see the details in the proms. Bring that one up as an anchor point. And now I don't want this disk showing because there's really nothing in there that I want. I would just want the prom. So a nice feature of this, if I bring this down, you can start seeing it inverts it, which is fine. If there was something in there, I might leave it at that. But I'm just going to bring it and blacken that disk out totally like that. So now I've got a black disk, just the proms, nice sky. I like the details in the proms. So I'm going to save those settings by going up to File, Save Processing Settings, and you'll see I've already made that, but you name it, Northwest Proms, save that, and you get setting so that you can apply this to each one of your TIFFs. So we got to that point, go to File, and you select Batch Processing, and we're going to pick up all these TIFFs that AutoStacker did by clicking on them, bring them in. Then the settings file, I want to go back and get that Northwest Prom setting. So I'll click on that, set that in. Then I want to make a file that these are going to go into. So I've already done that. I've got the Northwest Prom 1113 in IMPPG. So I select that folder. Once you've done that, you just hit Start Processing, and it will start processing all of these all the way down and finish that. We won't watch this. It takes a little bit of time, especially with larger files, so we're not going to sit here and just watch this. Now we're back. We have processed all the TIFFs. They've all been done. The next step is to go up to Tools. This is still in IMPPG, and Align Image Sequence. Now there's different ways you can align your TIFFs to make your animation. Photoshop can do a decent job of it. PIP is another program. IMPPG is another one. We're going to add files, and again we're going to go to this Northwest Prom. I'm going to select all those processed images, and I usually stay with the default subpixel alignment, crop to the intersection of each TIFF, and I'm going to stabilize on high contrast features. I'm doing that because they are high contrast. You can do align on the solar limb. If you have really good seeing and the solar limb's very stable, you can do that. Typically I find these settings to work the best. It's not always perfect when you're not including surface features from the disk, but it does a pretty good job, at least to start. Then you select the file you want it to go into. In this case I went into the Northwest Prom processed by IMPPG and named the new file Aligned. I select that folder, and then all you do is you hit Start Processing, and it will go through and start aligning each one of these TIFFs so that they're aligned together for your animation. So I'll stop here. My final step in producing an animation is, once it's been aligned and stacked in AutoStacker, and I've done the processing as much as I want in IMPPG, I'll bring it into Photoshop for final alignment and any other adjustments I wish to make, and also actually put together the animation. So to do this, I go to File, Scripts, and Load Files into Stack. This little box comes up, browses to go find the files you want, and those are down. You notice I've been doing a lot of imaging lately, had some good weather. So here is the IMPPG Northwest Prom and Aligned. I want to use those, so again I select all of them, say OK, and I'm not going to attempt to automatically align source images. If you've got an animation you included sunspots and the limb with proms, Photoshop will do a great job of alignment. You can just click on this box, attempt to automatically align source images. It'll do a great job. If it's simply proms, it does not. So I'm going to tell it not to attempt, and we're just going to click OK at this point. And what it will do is it will bring in each one of those TIFFs that was aligned by IMPPG, and it will stack them as layers. So we'll let this finish its stacking of the different layers. We'll bring them in. This takes a few minutes to bring them all in. So now Photoshop has brought all those TIFFs in and it's put them all in layers, and we're going to check and see how the alignment went. So to actually produce a GIF, you go to Window, Timeline, opens up this timeline. You'll see Create Frame Animation. We click on that. This gives you a little box over here that you click on, and we want to make frames from layers. So we'll make the frames from the layers. Now when it does that, it actually loads them in reverse order. So you also want to go up, after it's loaded them, is reverse frames. So it's going in the time frame you want it to go from beginning to end. So then we just hit play and we're going to watch and see how well these align. So that looks pretty good. See, there's a little movement. You can see it sliding up and down just a little bit. And depending upon how perfect you want it to be, at this point in time, if you want to, we can delete that animation, close this timeline, go back, highlight all of these layers again, just open up the eyes on them all, go back up and start clicking off the eyes. Now you'll see there's a little bit of shift there that might bother you. If it is, and you have patience, you can just go up and select the Move tool. I'm going to click on the layer below the first layer, take the eye off, and you'll see it moves just a little bit. So I want to actually move this frame down just a little. Click. Now you'll see it doesn't have that movement. Do the same thing. See, there's a little bit of movement. And bring it back. A little bit up movement. Just move it down a little bit. And so forth and so on if you want it to be really smooth. Now, there are different programs that can align. Like I said, IMPPG does a pretty good job, and I know that the developer can make this so that they really align well. But you know, I've played with a variety of times, and I find that when I have just proms with a blacked out disk, it's never actually perfect. I mean, as you saw before, it really wasn't bad. There's just a little bit of movement to it, but depends on how much of a perfectionist you are. I mean, oftentimes I will go in and I'll go through and I'll move each one of them just so that it's as smooth as possible. But in this case, we're going to say it's okay. Now, you may not want to have all of the blank area around, so at this point you can crop. So we can go up and we can crop out some of this area. We don't need all this sky. We don't need all this black disk. Crop that. There's some dead area down here too. Bring it back up. And at this point, we got a nice AVI, a nice GIF going with some nice movement in the proms, some explosive areas going on at this point in time. You can also change the delay. This is running at no delay, which when you move this to watch it, it goes really fast. So typically what I'll do is I'll select all the frames. Then there's this little arrow down on each picture. You click that, you can change the delay. So I usually pick 1/10 of a second. And that slows it down enough so that when I export this, the movement's nice and smooth, and it's not as slow as what it looks like on Facebook or on Photoshop. Once I've got to that point, I want to save it. So I'll go to File, Export, and save for web. That brings up, always usually comes up as a JPEG. You want to change that to a GIF. It'll set up, you can actually then watch how it really runs in real time. You see it's still nice movement, but not as fast as it was before. Now the one that I actually posted, I went ahead and adjusted where the disk was so that it was a smoother animation. But at this point I would hit save, name it, and it'd be ready to present. So that's how I do animations. There are different ways to do it. Like I said, you can use a program called PIP to analyze or to align your individual AVIs once you've processed them. There may be other programs you can use to make your GIF. This is how I go about doing all of my animations. So I hope this is helpful to people, and have a good one. Hope you have clear skies.